Good morning slash good afternoon for those of you out there. Thank you for joining our United States Cloud Application Development Partner Community Call. We're happy that you would join us today. We have a wonderful guest speaker for you today, Mr. Ryan Slava. And just want to let you know this call will be recorded. If you're not okay with being recorded, please prepare to go ahead and drop off. Our topic for today is going to be Visual Studio Mobile Center. And I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Ryan. Ryan, are you out there?
Yeah, buddy. Hey, thanks so much, Wayne. I truly appreciate the intro.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to chat with us. Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about a product that is coming out of the newly minted mobile developer division. This is the division that was created through the acquisition of Xamarin, and it consolidated all of our mobile efforts, including Xamarin development, JavaScript mobile development, featuring things like Cordova and React Native, and then also a lot of other startup acquisitions that came out of the last year or two, things like Hockey App, Azure Mobile Engagement, Code Push, and several more. So today you're guys going to be looking at some new stuff that's coming out of the division, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to start by presenting my desktop here. Let's just quickly confirm that everyone will be able to see it. Hold on here. Presenting arms. All right. All right, is everyone good? Can we see it? Wayne, can you give me a shout out there, just confirming?
I don't see it yet. Just a moment. Go ahead. Yep, I see it now.
Are we good? Fantastic. All right, cool. So we're going to start off today's presentation with a little bit of slides just to set context. But I'm hoping that we'll get to spend a lot of time in the product itself so you guys get a peek at what's coming. All right. And as we go through this, please, guys, I would like to make this a conversation. Please type your questions into the call. Wayne will relay them to me. I like this to be an exchange of ideas rather than just me sitting up at my virtual podium kind of dishing out the wisdom. All right? Cool. All right, so let's kind of start by setting up kind of context for mobile development at large. There's kind of a trend within enterprise and within consumer apps that a lot of businesses are not just kind of curating or building out a single app, but many of them are building out 10s, 20s, even hundreds of apps and kind of appifying, if you will, their business by transferring desktop applications or browser-based applications to mobile devices that are often kind of tailored to a specific need or use case. And as businesses start to appify their business, the need kind of comes about not just to kind of do that initial development. I mean, that initial development, well, that's what we often think about when we think about mobile development, is that first push to generate the app. That's not where a lot of the work actually happens. A lot of the work happens after that initial launch. As we are keeping the app in maintenance, as we are monitoring it for deeper user engagement, monitoring it for kind of sustained product health, and hopefully learning and iterating on that app. And so, 80–90% of the effort actually happens after the initial launch and in the sustained engineering and kind of rapid improvement phase. And all of that happens in the context of the need to support not just a single device or a single browser, as has been the case for much of the last 20 or so years, but to do it in support of thousands of different devices. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the stats on like how many different Android, iOS, and Windows devices are out there, but there are literally thousands of them, and kind of managing that complex matrix of compatibility can get quite complex, especially since that list is only growing month after month and year after year. So how do we help customers? How do we help developers ship apps that will help keep users coming back for more and help them ship apps that their customers love? Well, we believe that kind of one of the biggest contributions that we can make is in that sustained engineering and rapid iteration kind of part of the life cycle. And this is where Visual Studio Mobile Center comes in. So Mobile Center is effectively a kind of an aggregation of many different services that are required for the upkeep and the delivery of mobile applications. Everything from build and test services to distribution and analytics, identity to make sure that you can authenticate your users and kind of verify that they should have access to the data you're giving them, storage, secure storage in order to kind of securely deliver that data, and then tools as well to help bring them back into the app and increase user engagement, things like push notifications and A/B testing. And we'll go through all of these kind of as live demos here in just a minute, but I want to give you an idea for really kind of the diversity of different services that are required to kind of bring a mobile app into life and how that extends beyond just the client-side development technology that you use, whether that is native iOS with Objective-C and Swift, Android, Java, Windows with C# or Xamarin or React Native or Cordova. All of those client-side technologies are just a small piece of the puzzle. So here's an interesting stat that comes out of a study from Digital Trends. And what they found was that only 16% of users keep an app after 2 less than perfect experiences. That means that you've got maybe a first impression plus in order to keep a user engaged with your application. And that is true not just for consumer applications, but even for line of business applications, where often you would think that the end user was, let's say, required to use that. But often what we find is that end users, when they've got a mobile app, even a line of business mobile app in their hands, and they just have a poor experience with it. They find that it's buggy. They're not able to do what they want to do. They will often revert back to alternate endpoints like the browser or the desktop application. And so kind of delivering those high levels of kind of or like terrific user experiences to the app becomes super, super important, in large part because so many of us have been trained as consumers of mobile applications to have really kind of a high bar for what constitutes a good user experience. The Facebooks of the world and the Airbnbs of the world have all trained us to kind of really expect a lot out of our mobile applications. So how do we make sure that we deliver those good user experiences? Well, the feedback loop is a really important piece of that. And this is a graph that I'm sure the vast majority of you probably have seen before. That kind of virtuous cycle between developing, distributing, observing user behavior, evaluating, hopefully learning from that, and then driving that back into our development so that we can deliver new features that users request, so that we can fix the bugs that are driving them crazy, and then kind of do it all back over again, get it back in their hands so that we can observe and learn again. Now, it's one thing to kind of, I guess, conceptually know that this feedback loop exists, right? It seems intuitive. It's something that many of us as developers have practiced for our entire careers. But it's another thing to kind of really see how it impacts the business in a concrete and tangible way. And so for this, I often like to use an example of, we can pick any business. I'm going to pick let's say a seller of movie tickets online, right? You know, think your Fandangos of the world, right? And let's say that 2 movie ticket sellers, Company A and Company B, decide to release an app at the same time. Company A has really built out their distribution and their testing cycle, ideally through automation, to release every 4 weeks. So from the far left-hand side of the kind of the timeline here, at 4 weeks, they've delivered, they've had an opportunity to observe and evaluate. They release again at 8 weeks, and then they can observe and evaluate again. So company A at 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on is releasing a new version of their app. Whereas company B, because they have not automated their distribution, because they have not automated their testing, is in a place where all of that work needs to be performed manually, right? And that logically, completely predictably, slows down the cycle. So let's say that company A at 4 weeks learns that in addition to accepting credit cards, a lot of their customers are requesting Apple Pay on iOS, right? And so by the time they have learned that Apple Pay is a highly requested feature at 4 weeks, they're able to release it again at 8 weeks. They've introduced a new feature before company B has even been able to release their first update. That means that company A, maybe their profits or their conversion rate increases 20% just by introducing Apple Pay. They are then able to benefit from a 20% higher conversion rate for, what is that, 16 weeks. That's from the 8-week mark to the 24 mark before company B is ever able to learn and react to the same behavior. That's more profit, that's deeper engagement, maybe that is even them capturing more market share over that time and kind of inching out company B. And so anything and everything that we can do to decrease the amount of time required to gain feedback, to deliver new features, new bug fixes into customers' hand is ultimately going to give us a competitive advantage that has a tremendous impact on the business and the app success. All right, so where does Mobile Center kind of figure into this? Well, Mobile Center, as an aggregation of services designed primarily to help developers ship higher quality code faster, and importantly here, at a known level of quality. And that is all intended to help developers focus more on their code and less on the mechanics of shipping and data collection, right? It also really aims at putting a lot of these services in developers' hands quickly without having to go through a bunch of configuration and setup and all of the kind of the hard work of getting a continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous monitoring service up and running. I mean, these are all of the services that are commonly layered under the umbrella of DevOps, which frankly I find a terrible label, but nevertheless that's what the industry has decided to kind of normalize on. In any case, these are the kinds of configurations that you would have to go through if you were setting up with an Amazon AWS or a Firebase out of the Google ecosystem. And so really what we're aiming to do here is provide easy onboarding so that developers can take little bite-sized snacks of these services and really just kind of integrate them into their existing workflows and hopefully cut time out of that kind of distribute, learn, develop cycle. And we do this through a set of developer-friendly SDKs, CLIs, and a web dashboard that provides services all using a freemium model. So all of our services, well, today in preview are completely free, but even when we go to general availability later on this year, the vast majority of our services will still be available freely to developers using them under certain service usage limits. And we'll talk about that more later. And then finally, all of these services, despite being consumable at the hobbyist developer level, are also going to be scalable at the enterprise level. Already today, we have a number of very, very large companies using the services, both the legacy services that have kind of come in to make Mobile Center and Mobile Center itself for large scaled applications. These include ginormous companies like BMW, Slack, Pinterest, Airbnb, All of these using apps or using Mobile Center for not only their line of business applications, but also in many cases their consumer applications where there are millions of users. All right. And finally, just a quick note here before we go into the demo of the technology itself. I want to kind of touch on some of the guiding design principles that we used in putting together Mobile Center. So hopefully you can keep these in mind as we're walking through the product itself. I talked earlier about easy onboarding being a kind of one of our primary value props here, and I really kind of want to underline that again here. So much has gone into learning from user experiences and the Azure portal and all of the legacy services that we're bringing together that we really believe that Mobile Center represents the next evolution in user-centric design coming out of Microsoft. And so we expect many of the design patterns that you see here to eventually kind of win out over the design patterns that you might see elsewhere within the Visual Studio and the Microsoft ecosystem. Also, we've adopted what I like to call a Unix-like philosophy of kind of components that can be piped together to form a full tool chain, but you don't have to adopt all of them together. You can adopt them one at a time. They are each terrific services. Build, great by itself. Distribute, great by itself. But they're like chocolate and peanut butter. They go better together. Also, in the context of kind of a lot of what you see out of our competition, I'm thinking here of primarily of the Google Firebases of the world. In Mobile Center, customers own all of their own data. So we are not using any of the analytics data gathered, for example, in order to fuel an advertising ecosystem or to kind of fuel any extra business intelligence that kind of Microsoft sells to third parties. All data from our customers belongs to our customers and only our customers. And you guys are free to take it with you, do with it what you will, pipe it into kind of Azure Application Insights to do sophisticated analysis on it, anything that you want to do with it. And all of this in the end is really designed to enable exemplary mobile experiences on your devices, on the devices that your customers are using. And I already talked earlier about free for most, our freemium model. Cool. All right. So with that, I think we've had enough of slides. Let's actually see how the product looks and works. And with that, I'm going to drop out of PowerPoint and go to my web browser. Right. Get over here to this guy. All right. So I'm here at kind of the front door for Mobile Center, our login screen. I started with our login screen because there's a couple of things that are important here. Of course, you're able to log in with your Microsoft kind of live identity, but this button right here, the Connect with GitHub, we find that the vast majority of our customers coming to Mobile Center are actually signing up with their GitHub identity. The reason for this is largely that our primary audience coming into Mobile Center are iOS and Android developers who traditionally have existed outside of the Microsoft ecosystem. Many of them have fully embraced GitHub as their kind of source code repository of choice. And one of the key kind of value props for Mobile Center is that whatever your source code kind of control system is, all you need to do is just set up the link between Mobile Center and that source code repository, and we will automatically know about all of the mobile apps that you are managing. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I want to connect with GitHub, and because I've already done all of my second factor authentication, two-factor authentication with GitHub, it just automatically logs me in. And as soon as it logs me in, it gives me a list of the mobile apps that are associated with my personal GitHub account. So I got like, 7 or 8 here. And let's see, we're gonna tour through Ride 360. Ride 360 is a Xamarin app that was built for Connect this last November. and it's just one of the supported platforms. We support both Xamarin, Xamarin Forms, iOS native applications, Android native applications, and React Native today. For those of you not familiar with it, React Native is a cross-platform framework, kind of similar to Xamarin, but it happened to come out of the Facebook ecosystem. It's used to power a lot of Facebook's apps, including significant parts of Instagram, Facebook Marketplace, and the like. Anyhow, this one's a Xamarin app. And now that I'm in here, we got a couple of things that we can do here. We've got a nice kind of getting started screen that tells us how to integrate it with our app, provides us with kind of quick get started information about how to integrate the SDK. From within here, I can also manage the app. I'm going to try to scoot my Skype little thing out of the way here. I can see in here that I've got an app secret. This app secret is used to kind of establish a bond of trust in between Mobile Center and my SDK. And then I've also got a list of all the different collaborators that are working on my app. In this particular case, a collaborator, you can think about it as anyone within your organization who is actively working on the app or has access to kind of behind the wall information. So these are all people who would have access to build configurations, analytics data, crash reporting data. I want to distinguish those from my testers, who are people who might have preview or access to preview versions of my app so that they can manually test it or beta test it, but don't necessarily have access to things like my analytics or my crash reporting data. So I got a bunch of collaborators here that are with me, but that's okay. We don't need to save any changes there for the time being. Let's actually get into kind of the entry or the gateway for a lot of our services, which is our build service. Many of you on the call may already be using Visual Studio Team Services. Our build service is actually kind of built on top of the underlying infrastructure of Visual Studio Team Services. We use it to manage a lot of our continuous integration, so you can really think about this as an additional endpoint on top of Visual Studio Team Services. One of the significant differences one of the significant differences here, though, is that Mobile Center not only supports build in the cloud for Windows and Android, but it also supports build for iOS. So we're working with a Mac data center that builds for iOS. And here you can see a list of builds and actually rather branches that we've configured where a build has occurred. We've got a nice red there to indicate where a build failed for some reason, green to indicate where it was successfully built, and then these other ones that are grayed out, these are branches where we have not configured an automatic build yet. The ideal way for Mobile Center to operate is that on branches where you want some kind of extra activity to happen, you want code submitted to that branch to distribute to your beta testers, or you want to be able to collect crash reporting information for commits coming out of that build. Those ones you will build on every commit. And then some of your feature branches that are not going to ultimately be distributed to your end users, those you will not configure continuous integration. That makes sense? Yeah. So let's actually see where one of these builds has been configured. Let's look at one of the more interesting ones, which is where the build actually failed, right? So here you can see that Samina was trying to fix a missing dependency. We can re-trigger the build and just say, go ahead and build now, or we can look at why this guy failed. All right, so here it tells us that it failed. We can download the logs from here, and then this will give us a little bit of information about what actually happened in the build. So I can show in Finder here. Just extract this guy. Yoink. All right. Oh, it's got double extraction coming out of this. Oh, wow. Can I unzip this guy? Oh, wow. My Mac is being weird here. It just keeps on rezipping it. Well, my apologies. All right, well, I'll have to figure out what is wrong with my expander utility. But suffice it to say that what would come out of this is a log, so that I can then go back and analyze kind of all the stack trace, not the stack trace, the build log to see what failed in there. Was it missing NPM dependency? Was it something? Was it a syntax error somewhere? What went wrong? Now, of course, we hope that most of our builds don't fail. We hope that they succeed. And that's exactly what happens here. Here we've got a commit where we were kind of looks like messing around with our Azure function. And here we've got the actual clean build output. And this is much like what you would have found in the build output for the failed one. But this time we see it where just everything went hunky-dory fine. Yeah, not a whole lot super interesting since, again, it succeeded. Yay! All right, so that's our build. The important takeaway here is that we've got complete transparency into what's actually happening to our code when it gets compiled and built in the cloud. With this, we can build in a number of different configurations. We can build in our debug, our release, we can sign it, and ultimately funnel that out to our publishing workflow, which will allow us to put it into developers' hands in the end. Now, often, before you actually kind of put it into your beta tester's hands, as soon as that build is complete, what you're going to really want to do is you're going to want to run an extra round of tests on it just to do kind of a sanity check to make sure that everything is hunky-dory and safe to put in your beta tester's hands. Now, there are many types of tests that are out there. You know, you've got your unit test, your integration test, your functional tests. What we find is that most developers have got a pretty good handle on how to kind of manage their unit test coverage. And in fact, those unit tests will run automatically when you run your build. But it's the UI test, the kind of the functional tests that come out of actually clicking around on the app where a lot of the more interesting bugs are found. Now, one of our extraordinarily kind of popular services that came out of the acquisition was Xamarin, is Xamarin Test Cloud. Hoping that maybe some of you on the call have heard of it or maybe even played around with it yourself. Just like kind of build is built on the kind of infrastructure of VSTS, so too is our test service here in Mobile Center built on the back of Xamarin Test Cloud. And what Xamarin Test Cloud allows us to do, again here I'm going to look at one of the more interesting ones where our tests actually failed. What it allows us to do is run a series of automated UI tests in a mobile data center, kind of a mobile device data center, where we've got literally thousands of devices hooked up to, I mean, it's actually an incredible data center. I've been in there. You see, you go into this super kind of dust-free, static-free environment with thousands of Android, iOS, and Windows devices just stacked up. Every single one of them has got a piece of tape over the screen to kind of protect it from a privacy standpoint. But what's effectively happening is that your application is being installed on that device when the test runs. It goes through a series of UI tests, and then it will record screenshots and video and kind of the series of steps that execute so you can see what passes and what fails. So let's actually do that. Let's go over here to where things failed. Here, during sign-up, it was running through a number of different steps. And here we've got a little red dot here on filled personal info to see where there was an error. And let's see if I can find out where this guy actually failed. Let's see if I can find it in here. No, we got a failure in here somewhere. What's that guy? Details. Test logs. Let's see what actually failed in our test log here. 3 errors. And I'm going to look up here. Full log failure. Error. Fail. What I'm essentially doing here is I'm just stepping through my log to see what actually failed at each step of it here. Took screenshots, full log, running in test cloud. See if we can find it over here. Nope. I'm not immediately finding the failure here, which is a tiny bit embarrassing, but also not that big of a deal. Let's see if we can find the one that is different. All those look pretty good. Failed personal. It looks like in this case what I'm guessing happened is that they were not able to actually log in. But let's see if I can find another kind of interesting one. Sign up, probably failed for the same reason. Yeah. All right. No particularly interesting errors on that one. We could probably find another one. Yoink. Any interesting ones here. Sign up. All these are failing during sign up, it looks like. All right. But either way, you get the idea that as you go through this, being able to have a machine automatically test your application before you put it into the expensive and time-consuming hands of your beta testers, that can be super value and help you kind of cut short some of the time required to ultimately put your app into production. All right, so once you've gone through the tests, let's actually take a look here at putting it into the hand of the beta testers. Now, Distribute is built on the back of Hockey App. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, Hockey App is a service that Microsoft gained through an acquisition about 2 years ago. It essentially includes two headline features. One is the ability to distribute to really an infinite number of beta testers so that they can use your app before you kind of make the big jump or the big plunge into the App Store. In some ways, this allows you to sidestep some of the artificial limits put on the caps for beta testers and the Apple App Store. In this case, we've set up a group of 5 beta testers and 3 QA agents who are not developers and don't necessarily have access to our kind of private or kind of concealed data like our crash reports and our analytics. And for each one of these, we can see a report of the history of releases. Let's see, we don't have any going out to our beta testers yet. Do I have any releases going out to these guys? Nope. Let's see if I have any releases going out to my collaborators. Yeah, here we go. We got a couple of releases going out to our collaborators. And in all cases, these releases are actually going out to their iOS and Android devices. And so these are releases that people are using on their phones without it being a debug version. So these are actually released versions, signed versions of our packages. And for those, we can see details about when it was distributed, what the size was, release notes, etc. And we can even then download the IPA or the APK from directly within Mobile Center. Now, these are tied very, very closely to the crash reporting, which is right down here, to the crash reports that we get for each one of our for our releases, whether they go to beta testers or they go to our App Store. Now, I don't think I've got any in the last 30 days, any crashes in the last 30 days for this particular one, but I do if I go back a little bit further into the last 90 days. Now, some of the really cool things that we can do here is this allows us to not only see crash reports for our devices, but also see which devices are kind of bugging out. Because often, when you've got a bug in your code, it may not be hit by all versions of the OS or all devices that are in market. So let's take a look at one of these guys. All right. So for this one, I can automatically see that this almost exclusively happened on iPhone 6Ss using a very particular version of our release, right? And then from here, I can then go in, take a look at what the errors were, even get kind of like make sure that it's the same in all cases. In all cases, it's a pretty obvious index was outside of the bounds of the array. And then I can take that and I can take that back to my developers and they can use that to debug the application. Significantly, we have stack traces available not only for the native iOS or the Android or the Xamarin application, but we also have stack traces available and source maps available for our JavaScript applications. Today, that is again being React Native, and in the not so distant future, that also including Cordova as well. All right, cool. So let's see here. We've got that. Let's go now into our analytics, which is often closely related back to not just kind of it's not just analytics for our product health, i.e. crash reports, but also analytics for how our developers or how our end users are engaging with the application. This is where analytics come in. Analytics is built on the back of the Azure Mobile Engagement Platform, which itself was part of an acquisition by Microsoft about 2 years ago as well, a company called Captain. So what this does is this provides us with kind of all of the event information that we want about daily users, sessions per day, the devices that are being used, geolocation in terms of what regions are using our application, the language that they're being consumed in, and then also the ability to capture information for any kind of custom events that are specific to your application and to your workflow. This is effectively compete with something like the Google Analytics of the world. Although significantly, you are not limited to just the kind of the reports and the data that you get out of Mobile Center. As I said at the beginning, as the kind of owner of your account, you are also the owner of your data. And so you can easily export all of this data to Azure, where you can perform kind of custom data analysis on it using something like Kusto or functions. So we've got here a look at, I said there was the ability to kind of capture your own custom events. Here's a list at what some of those custom events were that we defined for this application. So we can see how many people were sending file, logging in, logging out, etc. All of these are ones that we defined in the code of the application itself, right? So we can click in here, get a little bit of extra information here. No data within the last 30 days. Let's see 90 days. See if we've got an interesting one of these to show some good data. This app has been relatively inactive recently, so not a whole lot of good stuff to show there. For developers who are kind of at that inception point where they're just trying to get started with their app and confirm that all of their analytics is working, we also have Logflow. And no one's using our app right now, so I don't have a flow of data coming in. But what Logflow essentially is it shows us a stream of data as the app is being used. So I can see here a real-time kind of report of all the data that's flowing through our app. And we originally built this just as a way for developers to confirm that, that their events were hooked up, that everything was actually kind of working and the data was flowing through. Really interestingly, what we found is that a lot of developers have ended up using Logflow as a way to also debug their app as well. So they're kind of looking in their stream for real-time debug information as users are actually kind of engaging with the app and applying filters as a way of monitoring what a user is doing in their application. A really novel and interesting use case, and one that we intend to expand upon as we head into kind of deeper levels of development and kind of roll out of the service over the course of the next year. Then last but not least, I want to kind of turn from those aspects of Mobile Center that are aimed really at improving the developer's life from a delivery and a monitoring standpoint, and turn to those pieces of kind of the mobile backend that are required just for consumers to be able to use the app. Every app needs a data source, and every app almost always needs a way of identifying users through identity. And for that, what we're doing is we're bringing in Azure Mobile App Services. Some of you may already be familiar with Azure Mobile App Services through Easy Tables, Identity, or push notifications. And that's exactly what these are. We're building on top of the infrastructure that already exists for Azure Mobile App Services by exposing tables and identification. I happen to know that these haven't been configured this app, so I'm just going to switch over to another app, the Quiz app here. Just another project that I've been working on. And so this particular app, the Quiz app, is, well, as you might imagine, it's an app for kind of trivia quizzes, right? And this particular one, we happen to we wanted to be able to preserve data about the player's score. And so here you can see we've got kind of a log here of the top 3 or so players who have submitted scores. Just like with Easy Tables within Azure Mobile App Services, you can edit your schema on the fly. So we have the ability to create indices, create new columns, soft edit data in production. And the SDKs that we provide automatically provide online-offline sync between your data so that as your mobile devices, weave in and out of good and bad mobile signal, you can be kind of caching data locally and then have it automatically synchronize with your cloud-based data source when the mobile device comes back online. And that is super convenient to me as a developer. And then last but not least here, identity. Here, of course, providing kind of social and enterprise auth identity services. In this particular case, we configured one for Facebook, where once you kind of authenticate with Facebook, Facebook will even provide back to you kind of information about that user that they have given permission to share through that kind of little interstitial that you often see in a Facebook permission screen. So I can get access to things like their favorite books, their fitness preferences, their birthday, their photos, their relationships, etc. In addition to social auth, we of course also provide authentication using some of Microsoft's kind of more sophisticated enterprise options like Azure Active Directory. Okay, so that gives you a pretty solid overview of what is available in Mobile Center today in preview. Again, all of this today is completely free, especially while it's in preview, and this is only the very beginning of the story. So to tell you the rest of the story, I'm going to jump back to my slide deck here. Talk a little bit about our roadmap, right? Because there's a lot to come out in the next 3 to 6 months. All right, well, let's start with the obvious. Between Hockey App, Azure Mobile Engagement, Code Push, all of the legacy services that Xamarin Test Cloud, all those legacy services that we are bringing over, there are quite literally hundreds of thousands of developers who are already enjoying and loving our legacy services today. And so one of our first priorities is going to be to make sure that all of those customers can successfully migrate over to Mobile Center. I want to be clear here that Mobile Center we really view as being the next evolution of these services. And so there is a long-term deprecation strategy for all of those. So eventually, Hockey App, Xamarin Test Cloud, Code Push, Azure Mobile Engagement, eventually all of those services will go away. We will make it a long process so that customers have adequate opportunity to get comfortable with Mobile Center, make sure that all of their data is properly migrated. We're not going to just flip the switch on anyone kind of with little notice. But you should know that it is our long-term plan that Mobile Center is the next evolution of these services. And so for that, it's critical to us that we reach total parity with the end market services. That means bringing support for organizations and teams, especially for large, sophisticated shops that are managing many, many apps and potentially many, many discrete teams. And we want to make the migration process easy in such a way that our end customers have an opportunity to fully vet the viability of Mobile Center before they make the plunge and kind of switch over. Our build service. So today we have tight integration with GitHub, but we don't yet support all of the most popular repositories. So despite the fact that we're built on the back of VSTS, we've still got a few blocking issues that prevent complete VSTS or Bitbucket integration today. Don't worry, those are coming very soon. We are working very diligently on them. And so that's on the near-term roadmap. We also want to provide developers with the ability to execute their own custom pre- and post-build tasks, much like you would be able to do out of Jenkins or VSTS today. And we also want you to have the ability to conduct automated post-build testing just with no extra action required. So you should be able to just, as soon as it's built, we've already configured testing on the most popular devices for you. Support for Windows. This is probably our top question that we receive anytime, anywhere within Mobile Center. When are you going to support Windows? The truth is that we don't support Windows today, but just like support for VSTS, it is super high on our list. We expect to have support for most scenarios in time for build later on this spring. And that is not just for UWP, that also includes desktop applications as well. And that will be integrated with all of our capable or able services. So crashes, analytics, tables, build, test, distribute, all of these should be supported. By the time we get to fall of this year of 2017, we should have complete support. Push notifications. You did not see push notifications in my demo of the app itself. That is another one that is in process today. It is essential for migration of the Azure Mobile Engagement Platform. And so push notifications we expect to expose within Mobile Center within the next 2 to 3 months as well. So that will effectively complete kind of feature parity with all of the Azure mobile app services being exposed in Mobile Center. And we expect a lot of our customers to be taking advantage of that. Okay, we've got here to Q&A. So I know that I have been talking nonstop for probably the last 40, 50 minutes. I hope that you guys have saved up some great questions or tossed them over to Wayne. I'm going to kind of now field it for you.
I don't currently see any questions at the moment, Ryan.
Wow, I've been that comprehensive, eh?
Absolutely. If there are questions, please go ahead and post them into the chat window so that I can send them over to Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, if while you guys are thinking of your top questions, a quick poll for you. Of those folks who are on the line, how many of you are working with teams who are doing mobile development today? Just a quick +1, me, that kind of thing will work out in the chat window.
All right, I see a few of you responding so far.
For those of you that are tossing out the +1, I would adore to hear your feedback on how relevant Mobile Center is to the work that you or your partner teams are working on. Feel free to toss your comments in the chat window. You can also, if you are interested in kind of having a one-on-one conversation, I would love to hear from you kind of one-on-one. You're welcome to send me an email to rsalva, that's RSALVA at Microsoft.com. Just to spell it out here, RSALVA at Microsoft.com. And as you're doing that, I will cap it off by saying that should any of you decide to give Mobile Center a try, and I truly hope that you will, or that you'll recommend it to kind of one of your interested colleagues who kind of might need mobile services, I would also encourage you, I want to go pop back on over to Mobile Center itself, and I'm going to point out that in the lower right-hand corner of Mobile Center, we got this little circle here. Anytime you have a question about Mobile Center, we are online and answering questions all the time. Just click on that guy, new conversation, and you'll see here that we've got 3 people that are online right now. So if you are using Mobile Center, not sure about how to integrate it with your app, have a feature request, just want to chat because you're bored and lonely, I don't know, please drop a line in there. Let us know how you're liking it. Let us know what questions you've got. We would love to hear from you. All right, Wayne, I'm going to do one last check-in before we call it good.
Sounds good.
All right. So again, please email me. My name is Ryan at rsalva@microsoft.com. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, there was a question about selecting an operating system when creating an app. I put it in the chat window.
Oh, sure.
So that was the only thing I'm seeing right now. So
yeah, sorry I missed that one. Yeah, here I will.
Okay.
Oops, I hit stop presenting. Silly me. Hold on, I will show you how to do it here real quick. Woink. So let's hit share again. Present desktop. All right. When you configure your app, I'm going to hit add new app here. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen again. I'm going to hit add new app. This is the moment at which you add your app. So I just, this is from my central dashboard listing all my apps. You can give it a name. At this point, you choose whether or not your app is iOS or Android and the supporting platform. So a couple of notes here about this, and I'm actually so glad one of the listeners asked about this. If you are using a cross-platform framework like Xamarin or Xamarin Forms or Cordova or React Native, you will create a separate app for each platform. So let's say that you are doing a Xamarin Forms app. You'll create one for iOS and choose Xamarin. Then you'll create another one for Android using the same code base and use Xamarin. This is a point-in-time workflow. It is our intent, I hope by build, we have a lot of ambitions by build, so we got to see how things line up, but if not by build, shortly thereafter. It is our intent that you will not have to do this twice for cross-platform applications like Xamarin and React Native and Cordova. You'll just add it once, and it will automatically support both iOS and Android in the same kind of UI. But today, you create it twice, both referencing the same GitHub repository or eventually the same VSTS or Bitbucket repository. Does that answer the question online?
Yep.
I think it does. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. And again, just use your little chat window anytime you got a question online, or send me an email, rsalva@microsoft.com. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you guys so tremendously much. I had a fantastic time. I hope you all learned something, and I hope that I get to see some of you guys using the service. Don't hesitate to ping me.
Thank you, Ryan. Let me go ahead and throw up a slide back up here. Excellent. So, as usual, we will be posting the recording back on this link and on the Yammer community. This will conclude our partner call. Thank you.
Okay, I've ended the stream, guys. So they are in. We are in the backstage